I have to tell you, I have this story that I think perfectly sets up what we're talking about today.
Oh, yeah.
So I just got back into running after a pretty long break. You know how it is, life, injuries.
The usual cocktail. I know it well.
But I was so careful this time. I spent months, and I mean months, in the gym, hitting PBs on deadlifts. My squats felt incredible. I genuinely felt like a powerhouse.
That feeling of pure, raw capacity. It's intoxicating.
It is. My confidence was through the roof, so I lace up for, just a simple 10K. A road run, I was expecting to feel totally indestructible, and
Yeah.
around kilometer 6, it just evaporated, gone. It felt like a total physical betrayal.
Mm.
My magnificent quad capacity meant absolutely nothing. My lower back started seizing up, my hips felt loose, and suddenly I'm just wobbling, feeling completely fragile.
That is the quintessential runner's paradox, isn't it?
It felt like it.
You felt incredibly robust in a controlled, stable environment, the gym,
Mhm.
but you lacked resilience in the dynamic, high-repetition world of the road.
Ex-
That feeling of strength, the brute force you build, it often has very little to do with actual running durability.
It was so confusing. I felt like I had the strength, but not the architecture to organize it all.
You've just hit the critical distinction right there.
Yeah.
Strength versus organization. It reminds me of Ying's own experience from the book where she talked about feeling so controlled and smooth on the inside,
Yeah.
especially when she was racing hard. But then she'd see the pictures afterwards.
And she was running, as she put it, ugly.
Running ugly, knocking knees, torso twisting, all of it.
I remember that part. She felt centered, but the reality was just chaos.
And that's the deception, you see. The body is an incredible optimization machine. It works so hard to create that internal feeling of flow by compensating all over the place.
So you feel smooth because your body is just brilliant at shuffling resources around.
Exactly. It's brilliant at maintaining that feeling of stability, even if it means digging these dysfunctional energy-leaking patterns deeper and deeper. That's your nervous system calibrating to the dysfunction.
Okay, we have to unpack this because this just completely challenges the whole assumption that strength is about lifting heavy things.
It does.
So today, we are going to explore Chapter 16, On the Road, from the Runner's Paradox. And our mission really is to get past that weight room definition of strength and start to understand it as organization, as stabilization, as dynamic control.
This really shifts the entire training focus, I think. For anyone who runs, really, we're changing the question from how much force can I generate to
Yeah.
how efficiently can my body distribute and recycle that force thousands of times in a row.
And as we move through this, just a reminder that this whole series is based on the Runner's Paradox. If these ideas are resonating, and I have a feeling they will, you can find information and grab a copy of the book by visiting therunnersparadox.com.
So let's start with the basic nature of running. The book defines it as a high-repetition, low-margin activity. And that's a really crucial place to begin.
Low margin, what does that really mean in a body context?
It means you're doing the same movement, the gait cycle, over and over and over, thousands of times,
Right.
without a break.
Right.
So if there's just a tiny fractional error in your stability or in your sequencing,
A millimeter of hip drop or something.
a millimeter hip drop exactly, multiply that by 5,000 steps, and suddenly that tiny error becomes a pretty significant cumulative micro-trauma.
That makes so much sense. And the book is pretty clear on where that failure usually comes from.
Absolutely. And this is the key insight. Most running failures, most injuries, they don't happen because of a lack of power. It's not that the runner couldn't push hard enough.
It's that they lacked control.
They lacked inadequate neuromechanical control. The body just didn't have the systemic ability to organize that movement efficiently, especially under fatigue.
So we have to completely redefine strength. For us as runners, it's not about the number on the dumbbell.
Not at all. It's about muscle intelligence. We have to start seeing strength as a neuromechanical ability. It's not about how big the muscle is. It's about the quality of the conversation between your brain and your body, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system.
That communication loop.
That loop. When your foot hits the ground, you're dealing with forces up to 3 times your body weight. That shock has to be absorbed, stabilized, and recycled in milliseconds.
So the real strength is the speed and the accuracy of that stabilization, that message.
Yes. How well can your system tolerate that load? How well does it absorb the kinetic energy? And then how well does it recycle that energy into forward motion? And this is the real test. How well can it do all of that when you're tired, dehydrated, and just trying to hold your pace in mile 18?
The best runners aren't just the strongest, then. They're the best organizers.
They're the best architectural organizers of movement.
Which brings us to what feels like the critical error so many of us make, and what keeps us stuck in that injury cycle.
Segmental thinking.
Segmental thinking. We focus on one muscle at a time, thinking if we make the quads stronger, the whole system just magically benefits.
And segmental thinking is the enemy of efficiency in an activity like running, which is all about synergy. It has to be systemic.
So take the quad example. Let's say you build these huge, powerful quads, but you neglect the little muscles, the hip stabilizers.
You're not just being ineffective, you are actively creating an imbalance. It's actually detrimental.
Why is it actively detrimental?
Because you've built this massive engine, but you haven't built the chassis or the steering wheel to control it. So the stronger quads, they have more capacity, so they just dominate the movement. They overpower the weak links, the little rotators, the deep core muscles that are supposed to control how your femur lands.
And you end up with these hot spots.
You create concentrated areas of high stress, and that's where your tendons and your ligaments eventually fail. The power you're generating is just leaking out all over the place, causing uncontrolled rotation at the knee or the hip.
The powerful muscle ends up compensating for the weak structure, and that's the risk.
Precisely. Or think about the calf. You can do calf raises all day, but the book emphasizes the need for Achilles stiffness.
Right.
If that Achilles tendon is too lax, too stretchy, it's like connecting a powerful spring to a wet noodle. All that muscle power just dissipates. It's lost.
You need that stiffness to get the elastic energy return, the bounce.
Which accounts for a huge percentage of running efficiency. You need that recoil.
So if we ignore all this, if we just strengthen the parts, the body compensates. And that's where we get that metaphor of the groove being etched deeper and deeper.
This is such a profound idea.
Mm.
The body is always, always seeking the path of least resistance, the lowest energy cost. So if your hip stabilizer is weak, you might just subtly lean your torso a little bit to keep your head over your center of gravity.
And because the nervous system's job is to create flow, that bad pattern starts to feel normal.
Yes, that's proprioceptive adaptation. Your nervous system is brilliantly rewiring your sensory feedback to normalize the dysfunction. The more you run with that lean, the more your brain just accepts it.
The groove deepens.
The groove deepens. You feel balanced. You feel efficient. Even if an external analysis shows these huge compensatory patterns that are just piling up microtrauma.
So unlearning it becomes almost impossible.
It becomes exponentially harder because the bad movement feels like the right movement. You're fighting years and years of neurological conditioning.
The body is almost too smart for its own good.
It's brilliantly efficient for the here and now. It doesn't care about long-term structural integrity. Its goal is to keep you moving today.
So we have to be the conscious engineers of our own durability.
There have to be.
Okay, let's really get into this difference between muscle capacity and motor control. The real-world stories are where this really clicks. The anecdote about Ying's client Sam is, it's perfect.
Sam. He was strong, fit, active, but his capacity completely failed him the second he got on a treadmill.
And the observation was that he sat back when he ran. He looked like he was constantly hitting the brakes just a little bit with every step.
Pushing himself uphill, even on a flat surface.
So why does a strong person do that? Why do they default to such an energy-wasting posture?
Because his core wasn't strong enough. Or, to be more precise, it wasn't coordinated enough to hold his pelvis in a neutral, upright position.
The pelvis, that's the foundation.
The pelvis is the generator of forward motion. If that foundation is wobbly, you can't generate power efficiently from your hips.
So instead of moving from the glutes, from the big engines, he was driving with his knees and feet.
Exactly. He was using the distal parts of the chain. When you sit back like that, you increase the braking force every single time your foot hits the ground. It kills your elastic energy return, and it forces your knees and feet to work overtime just to pull you forward.
And the consequence is just massive energy leakage.
Huge energy leakage. With an unstable pelvis, you get that side-to-side shift or you overextend your knee, and all that inefficiency just makes you tired faster. And eventually that compensation chain tightens up all the way into his neck and shoulders.
Even though the problem started in his core.
The origin of the failure was the weak architecture of his core and pelvis. Sam had the engine capacity for sure, but he lacked the organizational chassis to use it.
Which just goes to show true strength for a runner, it doesn't show up in the gym.
But shows up on the road. Specifically, it shows up the moment your form starts to break down from fatigue.
Mile 17.
Mile 17 of a marathon, or the last rep of a hard interval session. That's when your conscious effort to hold good form just disappears. Your body defaults to its established groove.
And if that groove is dysfunctional,
Those compensations get amplified under stress. And that's what drives you straight toward an overuse injury.
wow. It really makes you realize how many of us are just training on a foundation of sand, doesn't it?
It does.
Which brings us to injury recovery. The classic advice is just rest. But the book makes this incredible point that rest alone just preserves the dysfunction.
This is a critical idea, and it really challenges a lot of conventional wisdom. Rest is essential, obviously. Tissues need to heal.
Of course.
But rest, by itself, does not restore systemic strength. In fact, while you're resting, the injured tissue and all the healthy supporting muscles around it, they atrophy.
So what happens when we start running again after that?
Your nervous system, which is still running on that old pre-injury dysfunctional software, now have to compensate for even weaker muscles.
Oh, wow.
So it instinctively relies on the muscles that have the most capacity, the ones that are easiest to recruit. And that just reinforces the very movement pattern that got you injured in the first place.
You feel better because the pain is gone, but the cause of the injury is still loaded and just waiting.
It's still there. This is why good rehab has to go beyond just treating the site of the pain. The pain is often just the victim.
You have to find the culprit.
You have to address the mechanism of injury. We saw this with Daniel in the book. He had this debilitating shin pain.
Medial tibial stress syndrome. He was focusing everything on his shin.
But the root cause was way higher up the chain.
It was his hip.
It was restricted hip mobility and weak foot intrinsic muscles. If you think about the biomechanics, if your hip stabilizers can't control the rotation of your femur,
The lower leg has to pick up the slack.
the shin muscles are forced to act as stabilizers, a job they were never designed for. The instability at the hip creates this huge burden way down at the ankle. The shin becomes the overworked victim.
And resting his shin would never fix his hip mobility.
Never. Until he addressed the weaknesses at both ends of the chain, that shin pain was guaranteed to come back. It was a failure of organization, not a failure of the shin.
That's a huge mental shift, and it all goes back to the body's incredible ability to just compensate, to create the illusion of a perfect gait.
The ideal gait is that stacked body, moving from the core, minimal rotation. But we all deviate. Our brains are so brilliant at creating the illusion of balance. It can even level our gaze when our head is tilted forward.
So we think we're upright.
We think we're upright, but we're reinforcing neck weakness. That internal brilliance, that drive for smoothness. It's the very thing we have to become consciously aware of, because if we don't, that compensation will eventually cause damage.
We can't trust the body to self-correct.
No, because the body has already adapted to make the deviation feel normal. The only path to durability is to intentionally dismantle those efficient but damaging patterns and replace them with something sound.
This whole exploration of durability and control is it's such a powerful idea for anyone who's ever had a recurring injury. And if you're listening and this is challenging your own ideas about training, remember, this entire discussion is drawn directly from Chapter 16 of The Runner's Paradox. For more, and to get the book, just visit therunnersparadox.com.
Okay, let's make this practical. If strength is about organization and control, what does that kind of strength training actually look like?
The core principle to remember is this. Strength is the nervous system's expression of safety.
Safety, okay.
If your nervous system feels that a movement is stable and controlled, it will allow you to generate more force. So our training has to be intentional, it has to be layered, and it has to recruit muscles in patterns that actually look like running.
Which immediately rules out most of the machines in a typical gym.
It really does. We have to move away from open chain isolation movements, hamstring curl machine where your body is completely supported.
Because running is never like that.
Running demands synergy, which is why we have to focus on closed chain exercises.
Can you just clarify that difference for anyone listening? The why behind it. Of course. In a closed chain exercise, so think a weighted squat, a deadlift, a lunge, your foot is fixed to the ground.
Like it is when you're running.
Exactly. The force you generate has to travel up through multiple joints at once. Ankle, knee, hip, spine. Your nervous system has to coordinate stability across all of them at the same time. That's motor control.
Whereas on a machine, the machine does all the stabilizing for you.
Right. It offers almost zero transferable motor control benefit for an activity like running.
So we're training coordinated effort, not just raw muscle power.
We are building the architecture. So let's break down the essential components based on the book. The first and maybe most important area is stiffness work. And that starts at the anchor point, the foot.
This is where we get into the foot intrinsic muscles, Achilles stiffness, and that big breakthrough about the big toe.
The foot is the platform for everything that happens above it. We need it to be a rigid, stable lever that the body can pivot over, and the big toe is the key.
How can one little toe have such a huge systemic effect?
Because when you consciously engage it, when you push off the big toe, instead of just rolling off the foot, you trigger something called the windlass mechanism.
The windlass mechanism.
It's a profound biomechanical event. The plantar fascia tightens up like a pulley, and it pulls up the arch of your foot. This transforms the flexible foot into a rigid lever.
And that rigidity is what gives you the efficient push-off.
That rigidity is what maximizes your elastic energy return. If the foot is floppy, the energy just disappears. If it's rigid, you get maximum propulsion. Ying shared that this one simple focus, making sure the big toe is active and stiff, was a huge part of breaking the Singapore national record.
She wasn't stronger, she was just better organized?
She was better organized to use the strengths she already had. That is efficiency.
Incredible. Okay, moving up the chain from the foot, the next piece is single leg control and coordination.
Well, running is just a series of single leg hops, right? So your training has to reflect that. Single leg stances, pistol squats, dynamic lunges, they're all essential.
And what's the goal here? What are we looking for?
The main goal is to teach your body to resist pelvic drop and rotation.
So keeping the hips level.
Keeping the pelvis perfectly level and squared. Imagine you're balancing a glass of water on your hip bone. If that hip drops on the non-standing side, or if your whole pelvis rotates, you know you're compensating. You're using your back or your knee instead of your deep hip stabilizers like the glute medius.
That's training stability, anti-rotation.
Exactly. Which brings us right to pelvic control and sequencing. If the hips are the engine, you need to learn how to start the car from the engine, not from the bumper.
A lot of us lead with our head or our chest.
Or we drive too much with the knees. The ideal is to initiate the movement from the pelvis, creating that slight falling forward posture that uses gravity to your advantage.
And the seated pelvis control exercise is a great tool for this.
It is a brilliant way to feel that forward initiation. You sit on the edge of a chair, find a neutral tailbone, not tucked, not arched. Then you just practice leaning back slightly, keeping that neutral spine. Then when you come back up, you initiate the movement from the pelvis. You pull your core forward. It teaches you to stop sitting back when you run.
It sounds so subtle, a micro movement.
A micro movement with macro consequences on the road. You're reprogramming your whole sequence. And finally, you have to integrate power. Running, on its own, is a submaximal activity.
Right.
It doesn't provide the right environment to recruit your maximum number of muscle fibers or to handle really high controlled loads.
So you need a controlled setting to build that capacity.
Yes. Strength training is where we do that. We recruit those big muscle fibers through controlled force generation, like a heavy deadlift, and controlled force absorption, like plyometrics or drop jumps. You have to intentionally layer these things into your training to build up your body's resilience. That's prehab.
So we've established that strength is organization, but it's also not. It's not a one-and-done project, is it? It's something we have to constantly rebuild.
That is the reality of being a runner for life. You can't expect the strength architecture you built when you were 25 to just carry you through to 45.
Things change.
Things change.
Yeah.
Tendon elasticity, muscle fiber recruitment, even just the accumulated stress of life, of sitting at a desk, it all affects your baseline organization. You have to perpetually adapt.
So the real value of prehab isn't just about avoiding injury. It's about constantly improving your movement patterns.
It's about optimizing efficiency.
Yeah.
Think about the client, James, from the book. He focused on the prehab, not to get faster, but just to move better. He was working on his internal architecture.
And he ended up running farther and faster without even trying to.
It was a cascaded performance gain, driven entirely by efficiency. When you plug the energy leaks, when your Achilles is stiff, your pelvis is controlled, your core is stable,
Yeah.
every single stride becomes more economical.
He could handle more training without breaking down.
Exactly. He became efficient first, and the performance just followed as a side effect.
It really shifts your whole mindset, doesn't it? From an external goal, a race time, to an internal one, which is the quality of your movement.
That mindset shift might be the most important form of future-proofing there is,
Yeah?
because optimal movement is so deeply connected to your consciousness, to your attitude,
If you're stuck in that outcome-based mindset
then every injury, every slow run, it feels like a personal failure.
and you push too hard too soon to try and get it back.
Exactly. But if you focus on organization, on durability, on the process, you gain a much healthier perspective.
Yeah.
You start to see your body as a tool of exploration, not just a machine that has to perform.
And that allows you to be more empathetic and forgiving with yourself when things go wrong.
If you decouple your self-worth from your race results, a setback becomes an opportunity to look at your architecture. It's not an existential crisis. It gives you resilience.
And it brings it all full circle, really, connecting our running life to our everyday life.
You can't ignore it. The poor adaptations often get created off the road. Slouching on the sofa, carrying a heavy bag on one shoulder.
Sitting for 8 hours.
All of it creates these little asymmetries that get catastrophically amplified the second you go for a run. By embracing strength as the architecture of durability, you're not just future-proofing your running, you're future-proofing your life. Hashtag outro.
Wow. What a necessary and deep exploration of what strength really means. We started with that all too common feeling of being strong in the gym, but fragile on the road. And we've landed on this crucial understanding that for a runner, strength is durability. It's organization. It's a feeling of safety in your nervous system.
We talked about why just strengthening parts of the body is flawed, how our body's compensations create these deep dysfunctional grooves, and why intentional closed-chain exercises, focusing on things like foot stiffness and pelvic control, are what's needed to turn that raw capacity into real control on the road.
And this entire discussion has unpacked the powerful ideas in Chapter 16 on the road from the runner's paradox. If you want to go even deeper into these concepts, the book is available right now. Just head over to therunnersparadox.com to learn more.
And we really invite you to take this new perspective on strength with you, apply it to your next run. And to help you do that, here are 5 questions to reflect on while you're out there moving.
First, how do you really define strength in your running? Is it just brute force, or is it durability and organization?
Second, are you currently just reinforcing the patterns you already have, or are you actively working to reorganize them? Do you just feel balanced, or are you truly balanced?
Third, what does your body rely on when fatigue really kicks in? Do you notice the compensation? Your head leading, your pelvis slumping, your knees taking over?
Fourth, when you go to train strength, is your main goal to move weight? Or is it to move well, to organize that load efficiently?
And finally, number 5, what would rebuilding strength, organization, and control mean for stability and resilience in your life beyond the run?
These insights are really the foundation for a long and healthy running life. Next time, we move on in the runner's paradox to explore Chapter 17 and a different kind of internal organization, rhythm. That beautiful, complex dance between your breath, your stride, and your internal tempo.
Until then, we invite you to subscribe, share this exploration with someone who's maybe rebuilding their own running strength, and bring these reflections with you out on the road, where true strength reveals itself one organized step at a time. Run well.